Neo-Kyoto shimmered, a city of towering chrome and flickering neon. It pulsed with an unnatural rhythm. Time here was broken. Sometimes a street would loop, its inhabitants reliving the same few seconds. Other times buildings would phase, transparent for a moment before snapping back. Rain might fall upwards. Sunrise could stutter, a hesitant dawn. The citizens had grown accustomed to these temporal glitches, these echoes as they called them. They navigated their days with a quiet unease, always braced for the world to skip a beat. This was their reality, a life lived on the edge of a fractured hourglass, where certainty was a forgotten luxury. Kaito was just a teenager, amidst this temporal chaos. He navigated the shifting streets of Neo-Kyoto like any other, trying to find normalcy. Then, the headache started, a strange pull, a sensation of the world bending to his will. He discovered his power by accident, a desperate wish to undo a small personal mistake. The world blurred, colors swirled, and then, the moment reset. He could rewind time, not for the whole city, just his immediate vicinity, a small bubble of influence. But the control felt immense, terrifying, a power no one else possessed. The cost, however, was a cruel one. Each time Kaito pulled the threads of the past, someone else paid. He saw it in their eyes. A subtle dimming, a fragment of their life, their personal time, would vanish. Not years, but moments, hours, sometimes a day, stolen, siphoned away to fuel his temporal manipulation. He saw a street vendor age slightly after Kaito rewound a dropped crate of synth apples. He saw a classmate lose the memory of a cherished conversation. The weight of this parasitic power settled heavily on his young shoulders, a cold dread that never truly left. He tried to ignore it. He tried to live as if he were normal, as if the power wasn't thrumming beneath his skin. But Neo-Kyoto, with its constant temporal stumbles, was a perpetual temptation, a falling piece of debris, a sudden localized time warp threatening a friend. Each event was a whisper, a beckoning call to use what he alone possessed. The city's broken rhythm mirrored the turmoil within him. He felt the immense burden of his secret, a dangerous gift in a world already teetering on the brink of temporal collapse. He was alone with this terrible choice. One afternoon, the shimmering air of Neo-Kyoto crackled with more than just its usual temporal static. Kaito's best friend, Hiro, was caught in a sudden street collapse. A sinkhole, a product of some unseen temporal stress, yawned open beneath a pedestrian walkway. Hiro stumbled, his cry swallowed by the grinding sounds of shifting plascrete and metal. Kaito watched, frozen for a heartbeat, the scene etching itself into his mind. He knew what he had to do. The familiar, sickening lurch of his power was already building within him. He could not just stand by and watch. With a silent scream, Kaito wrenched time backward. The ground reformed. Hiro was standing safe, confused, brushing dust from his clothes, unaware of the abyss that had nearly claimed him. Relief washed over Kaito, so potent it almost buckled his knees. He had done it. He had saved his friend. For a fleeting moment, the power felt like a blessing, a true gift. But the metallic taste of the temporal shift lingered in his mouth, a grim reminder. He braced himself, looking around, searching for the inevitable price. The universe always demanded its due. The cost became apparent later that day. He visited Hiro's home. Hiro's younger sister Hana, a bright girl of 10, seemed different, subtly older, lines around her eyes that weren't there before, a weariness in her small frame. Kaito realized with a cold shock that Hana had paid the price. Days, perhaps weeks, had been plucked from her young life, stolen by his intervention. The joy of saving Hiro curdled into a profound, gut-wrenching guilt. He had traded one life's moments for another, playing a game he could not truly win. This devastating consequence forced Kaito to confront the true nature of his abilities. It wasn't just about small corrections anymore. Every use of his power created ripples, distortions in the lives of others, people he knew, people he cared about. The city's temporal sickness was one thing. His own contribution to the suffering was another. He realized he couldn't keep making these terrible bargains. He had to understand why time was broken and if there was a way to fix it without sacrificing the lives of innocents. His quest for answers had just begun, fueled by a desperate need for redemption. Lost in his guilt and confusion, Kaito began to wander the more unstable sectors of Neo-Kyoto. It was there he met Yumi. She moved with an odd grace through the temporal distortions, seemingly unfazed by the sudden skips and loops that ensnared others. Her eyes, calm and ancient, seemed to see more than the fractured reality around them. She approached him directly, her voice a low murmur. "You carry a heavy burden, Time Weaver," she said. Not accusation in her tone, but a strange understanding. She knew. She somehow knew about his power. Yumi revealed she possessed a rare sensitivity. She could perceive time echoes, the faint traces left by temporal manipulations, including his. She didn't judge Kaito, but offered cryptic guidance. She spoke of a deeper imbalance, a wound in the fabric of time itself that made the city sick. She suggested that his power, though costly, might be a symptom, not the cause of a larger problem. Yumi became his reluctant confidant, her presence a steadying force in his increasingly chaotic existence. She hinted that others were aware of the city's decay, and some were actively seeking its source. Through Yumi, Kaito was introduced to Kenji. A wiry, intense man with eyes that burned with a rebellious fire, Kenji led a small underground group. They called themselves the Viridian Reclaimers. Kenji was a former technician for the Chronos Corporation, the mega entity that powered Neo Kyoto, and officially managed its temporal stability. He was convinced Chronos was lying, that they were not merely observers of the temporal decay, but its architects. He had stolen data, fragmented schematics, all pointing to a cover-up. He saw Kaito's power not as a curse, but as a potential weapon. Kenji laid out their terrifying discovery. Decades ago, the Chronos Corporation, in a bid for ultimate energy control, had constructed a colossal device, the temporal regulator. Its purpose was to harness temporal energies, to stabilize the city's power grid by manipulating time itself. But the machine was too ambitious, too powerful. It had malfunctioned catastrophically during its initial activation, shattering the local space-time continuum. The echoes were the aftershocks. Chronos wasn't fixing the problem. They were desperately and secretly trying to contain a catastrophe of their own making, at any cost. The hidden truth was far worse than Kaito could have imagined. Kenji's data showed the temporal regulator was not just damaged, it was critically unstable. Its core was degrading, threatening a complete collapse. If it went, it wouldn't just be Neo Kyoto. The resulting chronal shockwave could unravel the entire timeline, erasing history, existence itself. The small glitches Kaito had witnessed would become an all-consuming void. They were standing on the precipice of oblivion, and the architects of this doom were powerless to stop it, only able to patch the ever-widening cracks. Yumi, with her unique perception, pieced together a desperate, almost impossible plan. Kaito's power, the Chrono Rewind, operated on a principle similar to the regulator, but on a smaller, more focused scale. If he could reach the core of the failing machine, he might be able to channel his ability, not to repair the damage, but to rewind time to the precise moment before the regulator's catastrophic first activation, to prevent the shatter from ever happening. But the cost would be absolute. His own timeline, everything he knew, everyone he loved as they were now, would be erased. The choice tore Kaito apart. He could try to live in this broken world, using his power sparingly, perhaps even finding a way to mitigate its cost. Or he could sacrifice his entire existence, his memories, his friendships with Hiro, Yumi, and Kenji, for a world that would never know his name, never remember his sacrifice. He thought of Hana, her stolen youth. He thought of the countless others living in fear in Neo Kyoto. Was his individual life, his personal reality, worth more than a stable world for everyone else? The weight of heroism was a crushing burden. In the heart of the failing regulator, amid screaming alarms and collapsing architecture, Kaito made his choice. He gathered every ounce of his power, the pain immense, the drain absolute. He focused on that single moment in the past, the ignition of the machine. With a final silent farewell to the world he knew, he unleashed the Chrono Rewind. Light consumed him. Then silence. Neo Kyoto reformed, stable and whole. The temporal echoes vanished. Clocks ticked with perfect precision. Only Yumi, standing on a street corner in the new mundane city, felt a faint, ghostly memory. A whisper of a boy who sacrificed everything. A hero forgotten for the sake of all.